The sky tore open above the red plains. It did not look like a normal storm. The clouds did not roll in from the horizon. They split from the center of the sky like someone had cut the world with a bright white knife. The air shook. The ground hummed. Every living thing in the valley felt the change. On the high ridge above the village, a line of tall, scaled warriors watched. Their skin shone like polished stone, striped in dark gray and copper red. They carried long spears and curved blades on their backs. Bone charms and metal rings hung from their belts and armor. They were the storm guard of the tribe. The nearest warrior, a broad-shouldered fighter with a scar over one eye, clicked his jaw plates in surprise as the light in the sky became a spiral. "The wind wall opens," he hissed to the others. The others shifted their weight, nervous but curious. The wind wall was a sacred thing. It was not simple weather. It was a tall circle of violent storms that wrapped the far edge of their world. It was the line no one crossed and returned. Yet tonight something crossed. From the center of the torn sky, a small dark shape fell. It dropped fast, trailing fire and smoke. For a moment it looked like a broken star. Then the shape twisted and slowed. Metal panels bloomed from its sides. A bright flare fired beneath it. The falling object jerked back, then lowered in a rough, shaking line. "A pod," another guard said. "Dropped trash from the sky. The wind dragged it in." Laughter rolled through the group. Their voices echoed over the empty plains. Down in the village, the people heard the roar. Children ran from clay homes. Traders stepped away from their tents. Hunters paused where they repaired nets and sling lines. Everyone looked up. The pod struck the far end of the red plain with a deep, heavy sound. Dust and red sand shot up like a wave. The shock hit the village like a silent punch. Plates rattled. Water in clay bowls shook. In the council lodge, a tall figure rose from a circle of elders. Her scales were a darker shade, almost black, with thin silver lines that traced old battle scars. Heavy rings of bone and metal hung from her crest. She was chief of the scouts, she said in a calm, firm voice. "Find what the wind brought us." 3 younger warriors stepped forward at once. One of them, narrow but strong, tilted his head in pride. His name was Sam. His armor plates were new, still bright, his spear clean and sharp. Beside him stood, broader and older, with a missing horn tip and a relaxed grin that hid sharp eyes. On Sam's other side was Emma. She was smaller than both of them, but her gaze was cold and steady. Around her waist hung tools and small devices. She fixed things, built things, and made strange objects work. Chief nodded to them. "Go," she said. "Return with truth, not with tales." Sam and Emma ran from the lodge and out into the red light of late afternoon. The pod's smoke rose on the far plain, a dark line against the pale yellow sky. They passed through the low gates of the village. Behind them, curious eyes watched. Kids whispered. Older hunters muttered about bad luck and foolish storms. Chuckled as they ran. "Look what the wind dragged in," he said. "Probably another empty shell. Maybe some broken off-world scrap we can melt." Sam breathed hard but kept his voice even. "Maybe," he said, "but the sky does not tear for nothing." Emma said nothing. She ran a little ahead, scanning the smoke with a small scanner she had built from old trade parts. The screen flashed with lines of data. "There is a life sign," she said. "One, weak but not gone." Snorted. "Some fool drift rat who sailed too close to the wall," he said. "Dragged in by the wind. We will bring him back and the elders will laugh." Sam was not so sure. The air felt strange on his crest, thick, heavy with a scent he could not name. They reached the impact site as the smoke began to thin. The pod had carved a trench through the red earth. Hot metal glowed in places. Shattered panels lay scattered. A strange, sharp smell hung over the ground like burned metal and bitter rain. At the center of the wreck, a broken hatch hung open. Something moved inside. Sam lifted his spear, set his feet ready to charge. Emma raised her scanner in one hand and a small shock rod in the other. A figure crawled out of the pod. It was not. It was thin and pale compared to them. 2 arms, 2 legs, soft skin covered in a strange dark material. A smooth glass mask covered its face, connected by tubes to a small pack on its chest. The suit was torn on one side. Dried red blood stained the fabric. The figure tried to stand, but fell to one knee. Laughed. "Look at this," he said. "Look what the wind dragged in, a soft walker." He had seen humans before, from a distance, on old trade recordings. They were wanderers, colonists, soldiers that passed through other stars. Stories said they were strong in spirit but fragile in body. This one looked fragile now. Sam stepped closer, careful but curious. The human's hands pressed into the dirt. His fingers shook. He moved like every muscle hurt. "Stay down," called. "You are broken, sky drifter. The storm should have finished you." The human paused. Slowly, he turned his head and looked up at them through the cracked glass of his mask. His eyes were dark and alert. He did not speak yet. He just breathed for a moment, slow and careful, forcing air into tired lungs. Emma watched the readings on her scanner. "Heart rate high," she said quietly. "Oxygen low, suit damaged, he should not even be on his feet." The human pushed again and rose. This time he did not fall. He stood in front of them, a little shorter than Sam, but still holding himself straight. Sam felt something shift in his chest. This was not what he had expected from a dying drift rat. The human reached down to his belt. Sam's grip tightened on his spear. "Careful," he said. "If he reaches for a weapon," added, "we end this." But the human did not pull a gun. He took hold of a long object strapped to his back and shoulder. It was wrapped in dark cloth, burned at the edges. Slowly, with clear effort, he swung it around and let it drop point first into the red dirt between them. The sound it made was low and heavy. The cloth slid down. A spear stood in the ground. Not just any spear. Sam stared at it, his eyes wide. The shaft was dark metal, etched with twisting lines and symbols. The blade was a curved, shining piece of alloy with a tiny crack near the tip. Around the grip, there was a ring of white bone pieces, carved in a pattern every child knew. Emma's crest rose in shock. Sgrin died. Sam whispered, almost without breath. "That is the chief's spear." He knew it well, everyone did. The spear belonged to Chief's father. When he vanished beyond the wind wall many seasons ago, the tribe held a great mourning. The spear was lost with him. It was their greatest symbol of courage. It was not possible for it to be here. Yet it stood in front of them, in the hands of a human who had fallen from a torn sky. The human let go of the spear and took one small step back. Then he finally spoke. His voice was low and rough but clear. "I brought it back," he said. "He wanted it returned." Sam's fingers tightened around his own weapon. "Who are you?" he asked. The human's chest rose and fell. He seemed to test his own voice as he answered. "My name is Jack," he said. "Jack Miller. I am from a human fleet station past the storm wall." Shook his head. "Lies," he said. "No one crosses the wind wall, not out, not in." Jack looked at him through the cracked visor. "I did," he said simply. "So did your chief for a while." Sam felt the ground tilt under his feet. Emma shifted closer to the spear, examining it without touching. "The markings are real," she said softly. "The bone is old. The metal," she looked up at Sam. "It matches the records. This is not a copy." Did not like what he was hearing. His crest flattened. "Even if the spear is real," he said, "that does not make this human a friend. The storm spits out many things. Some of them bite." Jack swayed on his feet. For a moment Sam thought he might fall, but he steadied himself again. "I did not come to bite," Jack said. I came with a message." Emma frowned. "From our chief?" she asked. Jack's eyes darkened. "From what killed him," he said. The wind moved across the red plain, whispering over the wreck and the spear. The three scouts stood silent for a long breath. Then Sam lifted his hand. "You will come with us," he said. "You will speak to Chief herself. If you lie, you will die. If you speak truth, we will see." Jack gave a small, tired nod. "Fair," he said. He reached up and pressed a small latch on his mask. The glass slid open with a soft hiss. For a moment the air stung his lungs. The atmosphere here was a little sharper, a little heavier than he was used to, but he kept the mask open. His face was plain, almost forgettable by human standards. Short dark hair, a thin scar across his jaw, tired eyes that had seen too much. Watched him closely. "He looks like nothing," muttered, "like any other soft walker." Sam heard his words but did not agree. There was something in Jack's gaze, a weight, a steady center that did not match his broken suit and shaking hands. Emma stepped back and gestured to the spear. "Take it," she told Sam. Sam hesitated. To touch the chief's spear felt almost wrong, but leaving it here felt worse. He wrapped his hand around the familiar grip. The weight settled into his palm. The metal was warm from the sun and from Jack's long journey. Sam lifted the spear and felt a strange shiver run up his arm. "We go now," he said. They walked back toward the village together. Jack limped slightly but refused help. Every step left a clear boot print in the red dust. On the ridge above, the storm guards watched them return. Word traveled faster than wind. By the time Sam, Emma, and Jack reached the gates, a crowd had already formed. Voices rose in surprise and anger. "A human! The storm brought him. He should not enter. Look at what he carries." Many eyes turned to the spear in Sam's hand. A path opened slowly through the crowd. Some spat in the dirt as Jack passed. Others leaned in close to stare at him as if he were a strange animal. Jack kept his eyes forward. Inside the council lodge, the air was cool and dim. Smoke from a central fire curled toward a vent in the roof. Elders sat in a circle, their eyes sharp and bright. Chief stood at the far side of the room. Sam and Emma knelt as they entered. Jack stayed standing until gave him a sharp push on the shoulder. "Kneel," said, "show respect." Jack hesitated, then lowered himself onto one knee. His muscles protested, but he stayed down. Chief stepped closer. "You bring a human into my lodge," she said, her voice calm but cold. "Why?" Sam tried to keep his voice steady. "Because of this," he said. He held out the spear. For the first time in many seasons, Chief's eyes widened. She reached out with slow, careful hands and took the spear from him. Her fingers traced the carved bone ring, the line of the cracked blade. "Father," she whispered. The lodge fell silent. Every elder leaned forward, every mind raced. Chief lifted her head and fixed her gaze on Jack. "Where did you get this?" she asked. Jack met her eyes. "Beyond the wind wall," he said. "From your chief, he fought there, he died there." A low murmur rippled through the circle. One elder slammed a fist into the ground. "Impossible," he said. "No one passes the wall, it is death." Jack did not look away. "Death is there," he said, "but it is not the wall you should fear now. It is what stands behind it." Chief studied him for a long, heavy moment. "You say my father is dead," she said. "You carry his spear. You walk in here as if the storms are doors you can open and close. Why should I not cut your throat and hang your suit on the gate as a warning to other drift trash?" Nodded in agreement. "He could be a spy," said, "a lure sent by enemies." Jack's shoulders rose and fell with a slow breath. "If I wanted you dead," he said, "I would not come alone." The words were simple, they were not proud or loud, but they were true. Emma stepped forward a little. "Chief," she said, "the spear is real. The symbol code matches the old records. The bone rings bear your family mark." She swallowed. "And there is more. The spear is not just metal and bone. There is a small device hidden in the shaft. I think it holds a message." Chief's fingers tightened on the spear. "A message," she repeated. Her gaze returned to Jack. "Did you place it there, human?" Jack shook his head. "No," he said. "He did, before he fell. He asked me to bring it to you if I lived long enough." A shadow crossed his face as he remembered. He saw again the burning sky beyond the wall, the swarm of dark shapes, the bright flashes of weapons, the roar of the wind as the storm gate twisted open. He saw the old chief standing shoulder to shoulder with human marines on a shattered platform, holding the spear like a banner. He saw him fall. Jack pushed the memory down and focused on the present. "I did not come to insult you," he said quietly. "I came to warn you. There is something coming through the storms, something that eats worlds. It used your chief's fleet as a test. It is studying your storms now. It will not stop at the wall." The elders whispered among themselves. Fear, anger, and doubt tangled in their voices. Chief lifted a hand, and silence fell again. "You will stay under guard," she said at last. "You will eat our food and breathe our air. You will not walk these plains without my leave." She tapped the spear against the floor. "And you will help us unlock this message. If you lie, the storms will not need to kill you. We will." Jack bowed his head slightly. "Understood," he said. Two guards stepped up behind him, their spears low. As they led him away to a small holding room near the edge of the lodge, Jack glanced once toward the open doorway. He could see a slice of the red plains and the thin line of the distant wind wall. The sky beyond it flickered for a brief moment. Jack felt a chill run down his back. The enemy was already moving. Inside the village, laughter still echoed in small pockets as people repeated the first words they had heard about him. "Look what the wind dragged in," some said. But for those who had seen the spear, and for Sam, Emma, and Chief, something else had settled in their hearts. Not laughter. A question. What kind of storm was coming, if this broken human was only the first message? Jack sat on the cold stone floor of the holding room while two guards watched him from the open doorway. The walls were rough and dark, carved long ago by hands that no longer lived. Outside, voices moved past, some angry, some curious, some afraid. He could hear children whispering and older warriors arguing. He pulled his damaged suit around his shoulders and tried to slow his breathing. The air here felt heavy compared to the thin, recycled air of his failing pod. Every breath carried a faint scent of minerals and smoke. He did not complain. He had survived worse than cold floors and sharp stairs. Across the village, in a smaller chamber near the council lodge, Emma worked beside the spear. Sam stood nearby, arms crossed, leaned against the wall, still unsure if he trusted the human at all. Emma slowly traced the shaft of the spear with her fingers, feeling for the hidden device she had sensed earlier. Her tools lay open on a low stone table, small lights blinking. "There," she said quietly, "a seam." Sam leaned closer as she pressed a thin tool into the narrow line. With a small twist, a section of the shaft slid open, revealing a small dark crystal set inside metal brackets. Let out a low sound of surprise. "Is that it?" he asked. Emma nodded. "Yes, some kind of storage unit, very old but still alive. It was placed with care." Sam stared at the crystal. Then the human spoke truth, at least about this part. Emma did not answer. She powered up a simple interpreter unit and connected it to the crystal. The light inside the crystal shifted, glowing faint blue. A thin echo of sound filled the chamber, broken at first, then clearer. The voice that emerged was deep and tired, yet filled with steady strength. Chief's breath caught as she stepped closer to hear. It was her father's voice. The elder chief spoke slowly, each word carrying weight. To my daughter and to the who still stand, hear me. I crossed the wind wall not for pride but for knowledge. Beyond it lies a danger greater than storm or blade. We found allies among the humans, strong of will and stubborn of heart. We fought side by side against a shadow that moves like thought and strikes like hunger. I fall today, but the battle does not end. Trust the one who bears this spear. He walks with the mark of truth and the stain of war. Prepare your people. The storm is not your shield. It is their door. The message ended with a soft crackle and then silence. No one spoke for a long moment. Chief closed her eyes as if the room itself had grown heavy. When she opened them again, they were sharp and wet at once. He believed this human, she said softly. He called him ally. Shifted his stance. Words can be twisted, he muttered. Even the dead can be fooled. Sam looked at him. He died fighting beyond the wall. He could have stayed safe here. That alone demands respect. Emma removed the crystal carefully and sealed the spear once more. What do we do now? She asked. Chief turned away from the spear and walked toward the doorway. We speak to the human again, this time not as a joke. Back in the holding room, Jack rested his head against the wall, eyes half closed when the guards stepped aside. Chief entered, followed by Sam and Emma. Stayed near the door, still watchful. Jack straightened as best he could. You heard the message, he said before she even spoke. Chief stopped a few paces away. Yes, I heard my father's last words. She studied him with new eyes. You were with him when he fell. Jack nodded once. Yes, he fought like a storm given form. He saved my life more than once. A flicker of pain crossed her face, but she held it back with calm strength. Then tell me more, she said. Tell me what waits behind our storms. Jack exhaled slowly and shifted his weight to ease the ache in his back. There is a force moving through deep space, he said. We do not have a true name for it. We call it the Void Brood. It is not a single race. It is more like a hunger that learned to think. It breaks fleets, strips planets, and leaves only cold silence. Emma listened closely, her mind already racing over possible defenses. Sam's crest raised slightly. How close is it? He asked. Closer than you think, Jack replied. My pod barely outran the first wave. Your storm slowed them, but not for long. They are studying the patterns of your wind wall. They want to break it. Folded his arms. And why should we believe all this fear talk from a stranger? Jack looked at him without anger. Because I lost my people to them. My station burned. My crew died. I did not cross the wall for comfort. I crossed it because this is where the last barrier stands. Chief held up a hand to silence further argument. What do you propose? She asked. If you speak truth, then speak solution as well. Jack's eyes hardened. You fortify, you train. You unify every clan that still listens to your word. You prepare for war that does not follow old rules. Emma frowned. Our weapons are strong, but they were made for raiders and beasts, not for living storms. Jack gave a small nod. Human weapons failed too at first. We had to adapt. I know some methods, some patterns. I can help you shape defenses that use both our strengths. Chief watched him carefully. Why help us? She asked. Your people could hide behind other stars. Jack's jaw tightened. There are not many safe stars left, and your chief saved me when he had no reason to care. I owe him more than words. A long silence followed. Finally, Chief turned to Sam. Release our guest, she said. He will move freely within the inner village. He is not a prisoner, but he is not yet family. He will work with Emma and the War Council. Sam bowed his head, as you command. Looked surprised but did not argue. Jack inclined his head slightly. Thank you. You will earn that thanks every day, Chief replied. Later, as the sun dipped low and painted the plains in deep orange, Jack walked slowly through the village. Sam stayed a few steps behind, acting more as guide than guard. Children watched him from doorways. Some hid behind their mothers. Others stared with open curiosity. A young warrior named approached with cautious steps. His armor was scratched but well kept. "You really crossed the wind wall?" asked. "Yes," Jack said simply. His eyes widened. "And lived?" Jack gave a small, tired smile. "For now." Not far away, Laura and two supply workers whispered as they carried woven packs of dried grain. Laura glanced at Jack and then at Sam. "He looks like a ghost made of skin," she murmured. Nodded, "but he walks like someone who refuses to die." Sam overheard them and did not correct either view. Emma met Jack near a low stone platform, where tools and metal parts were piled high. "I will need your knowledge," she said, tapping a small panel she had removed from the spear earlier. "If your people fought this enemy, then your records may help me reshape our defenses." Jack studied the device in her hands. "I can show you how our shield grids worked, where they failed and why." Emma gave a serious nod. "Then we start at dawn." That night the winds grew restless. They whispered through the outer tents and rattled bone charms hung along the walls. The villagers slept lightly, aware of change moving somewhere beyond their sight. Jack lay on a simple mat inside a guest chamber, staring at the dark ceiling. He could hear distant guard steps and the low hum of the storm wall far away. His mind replayed shattered images of blue fire and screaming metal, of human ships torn apart by shadow forms that moved like broken dreams. He saw the chief again, standing firm until the very last breath. In another part of the village, Sam sat sharpening his spear, lost in thought. He had laughed earlier like many others. He had called Jack soft, weak, dragged in by chance. Now he wondered how much strength it took to crawl out of a burning sky and still carry another man's final duty. Walked the outer edge of the settlement, eyes scanning the horizon. He still did not trust the human fully, but the words of the fallen chief echoed in his mind. "Trust the one who bears this spear." Emma remained awake long into the night, working by soft lantern light. She sketched rough shapes and lines, comparing tech and the strange ideas Jack described. Energy flows, shield angles, pulse rhythms she had never considered before. As the dark hours passed, a faint tremor rolled through the ground. It was so light that most of the village did not feel it. Jack did. He sat up, alert at once. Outside, the wind shifted direction. A low, distant hum crept across the plains, like a far drumbeat beneath the world itself. Jack stepped to the doorway and looked out toward the wind wall. For a brief moment, the sky beyond it flashed an unnatural shade of violet. Then the light faded. Jack knew what it meant. The enemy had reached the outer edge of the storm. Morning came with heavy silence. Even the birds that often circled the high rocks stayed away. The village moved slower, as if everyone felt the unseen pressure in the air. Chief gathered the council again, and Jack stood among them this time not as captive, but as a witness. "The tremor last night," Jack said quietly, "was not the storm, it was them probing the barrier." A low murmur swept the elders. Emma lifted her head. "Then we do not have much time." "No," he agreed. "You have days, not seasons." Chief raised her chin. "Then we use every hour we have. We become the storm that breaks teeth." Outside, the villagers began reinforcing walls, moving supplies inward, and preparing weapons as the sun climbed higher. Some still whispered jokes about the human drawn from the wind. But fewer laughed now. And deep in the sky beyond the wall, something vast turned its gaze toward the red plains, sensing resistance, sensing life, and deciding it would be taken. The village changed over the next 2 days. Where there had once been open paths and relaxed guards, there were now lines of sharpened stakes and heavy stone barriers. Warriors trained without pause, their movements hard and fast under the red sun. The sound of metal striking metal filled the air from dawn until dark. Jack moved between groups, showing simple hand signs and basic battle patterns from human ground units. He did not speak in long lessons. He spoke in short, clear steps. Spread out, do not cluster. The enemy likes tight groups. Keep motion, keep space, he said again and again. Some listened, some doubted, but everyone watched. Sam trained beside him often. He noticed how Jack never raised his voice, never mocked anyone, and never spoke of himself as greater. When a young warrior fell during a drill, Jack helped him up without a word of pride. Kept his distance but observed closely. He still carried doubt, yet he could not ignore how sharp and focused the human had become. Emma worked on the ridge overlooking the village, near a cluster of old signal towers. Using spare parts, bone plating, and fragments of human tech from Jack's ruined pod, she built small energy nodes that pulsed faint light when activated. These will not stop the enemy, she said, adjusting a small crystal socket, but they will weaken the first strike. Jack nodded. Even a slight bend in their flow could change everything. Near the outer fields, organized supply routes, while Laura helped move food and water to underground storage pits. Children were kept closer to the inner rings of the settlement. The elders watched from the council platform, their faces drawn with quiet worry. As the third night approached, a strange glow appeared along the distant wind wall. It shimmered like broken glass lit from behind. Jack stood beside Sam and Emma on the ridge, eyes fixed on the sight. "It has started," he said. Sam's voice was low. "Will they break through tonight?" "Not yet," Jack replied. "They like to test first. They feel for weak spots like a hand on thin ice." Emma folded her arms tightly, "And when they find one, they strike without mercy." The glow faded slowly as darkness settled over the plains, but no one slept easily. Near midnight, a sharp cry echoed from the southern watch post. Then came a burst of light, and then another. Jack was on his feet at once. "First contact," he said, already moving. War horns sounded across the village. Warriors rushed to positions. Sam grabbed his spear and ran at Jack's side, followed, expression grim. When they reached the southern ridge, they saw it. 3 dark forms moved through the red dust below, low and fast. They did not look solid. Their shapes shifted as if made of shadow and smoke, yet their outlines held sharp edges that cut through the night air. A archer fired. The bolt passed through one shape with a faint spark, doing little more than angering it. The shadow form surged forward, striking the ground with a crack of black light. The impact threw 2 warriors backward. Jack raised his voice. "Pulse weapons now. Aim where the core densifies. Do not waste fire." Emma activated the nearest node. A wave of pale blue energy rippled outward. The shadow creature shuddered, its form tightening for an instant. "Now," Jack shouted. Spears and energy bolts struck together. This time, the hit landed true. The creature let out a sound like tearing metal and forced air, then split apart into fragments that faded into dark mist. The others sliding backward with unnatural speed, melting into the plain. A heavy silence followed. "Approach breathing hard. Is that all?" Jack shook his head. "Scouts, just feeling your teeth." Sam looked down at the spot where the creature had fallen. The ground there was blackened and cold, even though the night air was warm. "This is only the first page of a long book," Jack said quietly. Over the next 2 days, the attacks grew bolder. Shadow scouts tested different sides of the village, striking in quick bursts and retreating before full retaliation. Each time, Jack guided the response, and Emma adjusted her systems. They adapted faster than Jack had expected. Sam learned to read the enemy's movements with sharp focus, began taking orders without open complaint. Even the elders showed quiet approval as their warriors stood strong. On the 4th night, the sky changed again. A deep, slow ripple moved across the stars above the wind wall. Then a giant shape appeared behind the storms, barely visible but massive. It blocked patches of starlight as it hovered like a dark moon. Jack felt his chest tighten. "That is not a scout," he murmured. Chief stood beside him on the platform, gaze steady. "Then the real storm has arrived." Suddenly, a piercing tone filled the air. It was not sound as ears knew it. It vibrated through bone and skin, a call from something that did not care for language. The ground trembled in answer. From the wall of storms, cracks of black energy opened like wounds in the sky. Through them poured dozens of shadow forms, larger and more solid than before. They did not hesitate. They rushed forward. "Positions," Jack ordered. "Hold lines, do not break." The first wave hit the outer defenses with harsh force. Energy flashed. Dust and broken stone flew into the air. Warriors fought with fierce cries and steady strikes. Sam pierced one creature through the center as Emma's node flared beside him, shielded from a sweeping blow, and then drove his blade deep into the enemy's core. Laura and helped drag a wounded guard back behind the line, their faces pale but determined. Jack moved through the chaos with sharp focus, redirecting fighters, calling targets, keeping the defense alive through pure stubborn will. For a moment, it seemed the line would hold. Then the giant shape beyond the storm shifted. A beam of dark force lanced down, striking the ground just outside the village wall. The impact sent a shockwave through the settlement. Several warriors fell. One tower cracked and collapsed. Emma cried out as one of her nodes shattered in a burst of blue light. "They are changing the pattern," she shouted. Jack clenched his jaw. They learned fast. Sam staggered as another tremor rolled beneath his feet. He saw a shadow form break through the outer line, moving straight toward the inner shelters. "Children," he shouted. Without waiting, he rushed forward, spear raised. The creature turned toward him, its surface rippling with dark light. Sam struck. The blow glanced off. The creature countered, sending him sliding across the ground. Jack saw the danger at once and sprinted toward him. The shadow form lifted a jagged limb to finish the strike. Jack fired a pulse round into its core at close range. The blast tore it apart in a shriek of broken sound. Sam lay still for a moment, stunned. Jack knelt beside him. "You with me?" Jack asked. Sam opened his eyes and nodded slowly, still breathing. "Good, then get up. They will not wait." The next wave struck with heavier force, yet the defense did not break. Chief stepped forward with her ancestral spear, her form blazing with fierce pride. She drove it into an oncoming creature, carving a burst of light through its body. "Our land stands," she roared. "Our sky is not theirs." Her voice carried through every corner of the battlefield, lifting weary arms and steadying shaking hands. The clash lasted until the first hint of dawn painted the horizon. As light touched the red plains, the shadow forms again, sliding back toward the wind wall. The massive shape beyond the storms shifted and faded into the clouds of chaos. Silence followed, heavy and strange. Warriors stood exhausted among broken ground and scorched earth. Several lay wounded. A few would not rise again. Jack looked across the field, breathing hard, sweat and dust streaking his face. "They will return," he said, "and next time stronger." Chief nodded, "And so will we." Later, as the wounded were tended and broken walls repaired, Sam sat beside Jack near the ridge. "You saved me," Sam said quietly. Jack shook his head. "We saved each other, that is how this works." Sam studied him for a moment. "You do not fight like you think you are better. You fight like you think everyone matters." Jack looked out at the distant storm, because they do. Nearby, Emma worked on rebuilding the damaged nodes, adapting them based on what she had seen from the enemy shift. Assisted her now, handing tools without complaint. Organized patrol rotations with clear focus, his earlier nervous tone replaced by steady strength. Laura and moved among the wounded, offering water and calm words. The village did not break that night. It stood. As evening returned and the red sun sank low, Jack once again faced the wind wall. The faint glow had returned, but this time it pulsed with slow rhythm, like a thinking heart. He knew the enemy was watching. And he knew this was no longer just a warning or a test. This was the beginning of a long war, and they were no longer laughing at what the wind had dragged in. They were fighting beside it. The night after the great clash was quiet but tense. No one trusted the silence. Warriors stood in pairs along the outer line, eyes fixed on the wind wall. Torches flickered, casting long shadows over broken earth and cracked stone. The air felt thick, as if the world itself waited for the next breath. Jack did not sleep. He walked the perimeter with Sam and checking each weak point, each damaged barrier, each warrior too tired to hide it. "You should rest," Sam said after a while. Jack shook his head. Rest comes after the storm, not before it. Glanced at the distant glow of the wind wall. "You think they will strike again tonight?" "Yes," Jack said. "They do not like resistance. It confuses them. They will try to crush it." Emma worked near the eastern ridge, her hands moving fast over makeshift panels. She had rebuilt 4 nodes and strengthened 2 more. Thin lines of light pulsed between them like a quiet web over the village edge. Came to report. All supplies are moved inward. The wounded are stable. The inner ring is ready. Chief stood at the highest point of the platform, watching the horizon. Her spear rested in both hands, its blade catching soft starlight. "This land has never bent," she said, "and it will not bend now." As the moon rose, the sky beyond the wall began to change again. The glow did not flicker this time, it swelled. A deep pulsing spread across the storm like a dark heartbeat. The winds twisted into strange patterns, forming spirals that turned against the natural flow. Jack felt a cold weight press against his chest. "They are opening a gate," he said. Sam swallowed, "A larger one." "Yes, this is the main force." A low groan echoed through the sky, followed by a sharp crack that split the air. A massive tear opened in the storm wall, wide and jagged. Through it poured not just shadow forms but structures, floating spires of living dark metal, writhing and pulsing as if alive. Smaller shapes swarmed around them like insects around a nest. The ground shook as the first spire touched the plains. Jack raised his voice. "All units brace, focus fire on the core points. Do not let the spires root." The attack came like a wave made of night. Shadow creatures surged with heavy speed, striking walls and lines without pause. The first spire began to sink into the earth, sending black veins outward. Emma's nodes flared bright, casting blue light over the battlefield. "Now," she shouted. Warriors released a storm of energy and steel. The air filled with sharp light and deep crashing sound. Sam and fought side by side, striking in practiced rhythm, led a small group to block a breach on the western side. Jack moved forward, aiming at the base of the spire. Every shot he fired chipped away at the dark surface, but it healed fast, dragging energy from the air itself. "They feed off the ground," he called. "They are linking with the planet." Emma's eyes widened. "Then we break the link." She shifted her control panel and rerouted power from 3 nodes into one focused beam. The light surged and struck the base of the spire with concentrated force. The spire shuddered. Chief charged forward and drove her spear into the cracked core. A bright pulse burst outward, and the spire split down the middle. With a deep silent scream, it collapsed into dark dust. A cheer rose among the warriors, but it was short. 2 more spires slammed down beyond the outer barrier. Jack cursed under his breath. "They are multiplying." The second wave hit with brutal strength. One section of the eastern wall gave way under the pressure, and shadow forms poured through. Children cried from the inner shelters. Sam rushed to block the gap. followed, striking with fierce focus. Laura and dragged broken debris away to clear a path for fighters. Jack reached the breach as two shadow forms surged past the line. He dove, rolled, and fired point-blank into one, tearing it apart. He turned and kicked the second back just as Sam's spear took it through the center. "Hold this line," Jack said. "No one gets through." Sam nodded, sweat and dust streaking his face. "They will not pass." The battle stretched on, breath by breath, strike by strike. Every time the enemy pressed harder, the defenders answered with raw will and stubborn strength. Emma cried out as an energy lash struck her shoulder, sending her to the ground. Abandoned his position for a moment and pulled her behind cover. "You still with us?" he asked. She clenched her jaw. "Always." She forced herself back up and reactivated the node network, her hands shaking but steady enough to work. Jack saw a new spire forming farther out, preparing to root itself. He knew if too many took hold, the land would be lost. He activated the final charge on his suit's power core, overriding safety locks. "This will hurt," he muttered. He sprinted forward, leaping onto broken ground as energy crackled around him. He reached the forming spire and slammed his suit core directly against its surface. The device detonated in a burst of white light. The spire shattered in a storm of dark fragments. Jack was thrown back hard, rolling across the red dust. His vision blurred, his ears rang, pain flared through his side. Sam ran to him at once. "Jack." Jack coughed and pushed himself up slowly. "Still breathing," he said weakly. "Stop saying that," Sam replied, half angry, half relieved. The final push came as the massive shape beyond the storm wall moved closer. Its presence darkened the skies as if it pulled light inward. A deep voice echoed across the plain, not in sound but in pressure and cold thought. "Yield." The word pressed into every mind at once. "The ground is ours." Chief raised her spear high. "No," she roared, "this land breathes free." Jack stood beside her despite the pain burning through his limbs. "You will not take them," he said into the empty air, "not while one of us stands." The massive shape pulsed with anger and unleashed one final wave. Every remaining warrior stepped forward. No one retreated, not Sam, not Emma, not the elders, not even the youngest guards who still shook with fear. They struck together. Energy lit the night. Steel flashed. The wind howled. At the center of the chaos, Chief and Jack drove forward as one. Her spear glowed with fierce light. Jack fired his last charged rounds into the forming core of the enemy presence. The air screamed. With a blinding surge, the core ruptured. The massive shape flickered, distorted, then cracked apart into streams of fatting darkness. The remaining shadow forms wavered and began to dissolve, their connections severed. Slowly, the storm wall began to stabilize. The pools in glow weakened and faded back into its usual violent churn. Then there was silence. No more cracks, no more pulses, no more shadow. Only broken ground, tired breath, and the soft sound of wind over red plains. Jack dropped to one knee, exhausted. Sam caught his arm to steady him. "We held," Sam said quietly, as if unsure the words were real. "We held," Jack agreed. Chief looked across the field where her people stood, wounded but alive, broken but still standing. "Our sky remembers our strength," she said, "and it will not forget this night." The first light of morning crept over the horizon, washing the village in soft gold. Warriors lowered their weapons slowly. Some sat where they stood, too tired to move. Others helped the wounded with quiet care. Emma approached Jack, her shoulder wrapped, her face smudged with ash. "You nearly burned yourself apart," she said. Jack gave a faint smile, felt worse. Crossed his arms and looked at him for a long moment. "You are still a strange one," he said, "but you are not drift trash." Jack nodded, "Fair." helped Laura and guide the last wounded inside the inner shelters. Children peeked out, their fear mixed with growing awe. Chief stepped forward and placed the spear's base against the ground. "Today," she said, "we mark a new chapter. The one the storm dragged in stood with us. He fought for us. He did not flee. He did not break." Her eyes moved to Jack. "You are not a stranger now," she said. "You are a storm-born ally. You are welcome beneath this sky." A slow murmur of agreement moved through the crowd. Then stronger voices rose, and heads bowed in respect. Jack felt something shift inside him, something closer to peace than he had known in a long time. As the village began slow repair, he walked once more to the ridge and looked out toward the wind wall. It still churned, still roared, still guarded the edge of their world. But now it felt different. Not just a barrier, a reminder of what they had faced and what they had survived together. Behind him, the voices of the people echoed in renewed strength. Laughter returned, softer now, wiser. Plans formed. Walls rose again. The wind moved across the plain, but no one mocked it anymore. They remembered the night they stood against the darkness. They remembered the human who arrived with a spear and a warning. And they understood that sometimes what the wind drags in is not weakness at all, but the beginning of a legend.